Stay tuned, metal fans, because I'll be bringing you my top 10 favorite metal albums of 2023, but I'll also toss in some honorable mentions, as well as albums others are talking about but just didn't make my own list. So all of that coming up. So another good year of metal vinyl buying, and as I do every year, I totaled up all of the vinyl I bought in 2023, and this time that number is 122 albums, which is about half the records I bought last year. Much of that was probably due to moving costs, as I did switch apartments early this year, as some of you might have noticed. Anyways, out of all of those records, we're going to discuss at least 10, if not a few more outside of the top 10. What that means is that if I didn't buy the album on the vinyl format, then it's not in my top 10 list, so keep that in mind when you hit the comments section. Speaking of the list, I wanted to mention a few things regarding it, just to get this out here. First and foremost, no EPs, no compilations, no reissues, and no live albums. My list will be for new studio full-length albums only. Of course, as I do every year, I do want to stress the total and utter subjectivity of my list. It is my list and not necessarily yours. In fact, you should come up with your own list, maybe do a video on YouTube or post your list to social media. And in case you're wondering, I didn't watch any other top 10 metal album videos here on YouTube before shooting this. Not really concerned with other people's choices when it comes to my own. Again, be mindful of that while commenting. Also, I want to briefly run down my honorable mentions here, basically albums that just barely slipped off the main list, but are well worth checking out. So let's do that first. Starting off with Nervosa, this is their 5th studio album entitled Jailbreak. They are Brazilian thrash metal with some death metal leanings. Favorites are Suffocate, Behind the Wall, and When the Truth is a Lie. Of course, I also have to mention Enforced and their 3rd studio album, War Remains. They are American crossover thrash with some similarities to Power Trip, to be honest. Favorites on this one are Hanged by My Hand, War Remains, and Nation of Fear. Also in 2023, we got the 20th studio album from Overkill. This is Scorched. They're a legendary thrash metal band from the United States. Favorites are Scorched, Twist of the Wick, Harder They Fall, and Know Her Name. Next is Blutus Nord with their 15th studio album, Disharmonium Nahab. They are a French avant-garde black metal band that is better heard than described. Favorites are Mental Paralysis, Queen of the Dead Dimension, and The Black Vortex. Also, you should check out the 15th studio album from Raven entitled All Hell's Breaking Loose. They are British traditional heavy metal that often dips into speed. Favorites are Medieval, Turn of the Screw, and Go for the Gold. Of course, you should also check out the 2nd studio album from KK's Priest entitled The Sinner Rides Again. Treadmill as well, with moments of shred. Favorites here are Reap the Whirlwind, Hymn 66, and Keeper of the Graves. So with that, let's get to my top 10 metal albums of 2023. My number 10 choice is from an American death metal band that helped define the genre in the early 1990s and became one of the most successful death metal bands that come out of the Florida scene. They're also known for having a vocalist with a very distinctive style that continues all the way to their 11th studio album, which we're about to discuss. Of course, the band is Obituary, and the album is Dying of Everything. So an album whose riffs occasionally run a bit long, but also tempered with some catchiness and groove. Vocals are up to Obituary standards, and the melodic leads have truly elevated all of the tracks. Favorites are Barely Alive, My Will to Live, and Weaponize the Hate. Overall, this album is good, but I prefer the album before this a little bit more. Even still, there was enough here to include it in my top 10 list. If you're a fan of classic Obituary and their thrashy form of old school death metal in general, you'll likely dig this album. Anyways, at number 10 is Dying of Everything by Obituary. At number 9 is an album from a Brazilian death metal band partly comprised of ex-members of a Brazilian thrash band I mentioned earlier. And although the band has embraced more melodic elements as of recent, they haven't lost any ferocity or the blackened approach to their sound. So let's talk about the 2nd studio album from Crypta. This is Shades of Sorrow. So Crypta returns with a sophomore release full of crunching guitars, manic drums, and the menacing vocals of Fernanda Lira, who brings more variety to the table this time around. No more Sonia Nubis on guitar, but Jessica is certainly an excellent replacement and fits in well with the band. Lots of precision from all members as well. Very tight tracks. Favorites here include Dark Clouds, Poisonous Apathy, and The Other Side of Anger. Well, as I said earlier in this year, this album would probably make my top 10 list, and here it is. And with more of the melodic this time around, adding to their dark sound, not to mention the hooks, the chaos, and the bang-worthy moments, Crypta is still staying strong. So at number 9 is Shades of Sorrow by Crypta. My number 8 choice is from an American death metal band often known for their gory album covers and twisted song titles, even to the point of being banned in certain countries. Of course, they are also known for their often imitated musical style, including the vocals of one George Corpse Grinder Fisher. Yep, we're going to talk about the 16th studio album from Cannibal Corpse, called Chaos. Horrific. So even though you do get the standard and reliable formula you've come to expect from this band, there are moments that make this record stand out a bit. Eric Rutan has certainly settled into the band at this point, and his interplay with Rob feels more impactful this time. Solos are particularly strong as well. Also enjoy the infrequent slowing down points on the record, bringing in a little bit of variety. Anyways, favorites include Summoned for Sacrifice, Pitchfork Impalement, and Drain You Empty. So overall, a bit more viciousness and balance than before, likewise hookier riffs. Although we get faint glimpses of it on the record, I'd definitely like to hear more of this stepping out of the box from the band in future releases. Anyways, at number 8 is Chaos Horrific by Cannibal Corpse. My number 7 choice comes from an American death metal band that promotes itself as cold school death metal. And that icy approach to the genre is certainly felt in their second studio album, Glacial Domination. This is Frozen Soul. So Frozen Soul return with a cleaner and more polished effort. Vocals are sharp but still guttural, bass is thick, and the record's a little more melodic than last time. A bit of bolt thrower worship is here again, but they do stray from it from time to time. Really digging the horror movie love in these lyrics as well, which reminds me that you should definitely check out the music videos for this album because they are truly the product of rabid horror fans. Favorites of this one include Arsenal of War, Glacial Domination, and Abominable. So the band has certainly turned up the catchiness, the quality of solos, the clarity of vocals, and the slow and crushing brutality. An excellent follow-up to the last album, but also more refined and tighter overall. So at number 7 is Glacial Domination by Frozen Soul. At number 6 is an album from an American death grind band that has gone through a number of member changes over its 32-year history, with only one original member left. Even still, they've maintained their technical but brutal sound all the way up to their 9th studio album. So let's talk about Make Them Beg for Death by Dying Fetus. So definitely a tight and technical album that doesn't skimp on the brutal death metal. Plenty of chugging riffs, catchy grooves, blast beats, and slammy breakdowns. Throw in some amazing fretwork and some killer production, and it's repeat spins for days. Favorites on this one include Compulsion for Cruelty, Unbridled Fury, and When the Trend Ends. So, Dying Fetus certainly doesn't disappoint with a hooky, chaotic, and brutal 38 minutes that absolutely leaves the listener wanting more. And who doesn't love this album cover? Anyways, at number 6 is Make Them Beg for Death by Dying Fetus. At number 5 is an album from a Swedish epic doom metal band that formed in 1988, broke up in 1992, reformed in 2010, and then put out their very first album in 2015. Fast forward 8 years later, and they're up to album number 4, entitled Reign of the Reaper. Yes, we are definitely talking about Sorcerer. So once again, killer epic vocals that clearly channel the spirit of Dio himself, along with neoclassical shred, haunting doom riffs, dramatic flourishes, and tastefully utilized keyboards. Lots of atmosphere and power throughout. Favorites on the album include Morning Star, Eternal Sleep, and The Underworld. So granted, it's a shorter album this time, but also dense with that power-laden epic doom that Sorcerer is known for. Also more compelling guitar lines, more use of vocal range, and an even better record than the last, which was pretty great as it stands. So at number 5 is Reign of the Reaper by Sorcerer. My number 4 choice is from a Scottish blackened speed metal band comprised of a single member, whose third studio album explores the folklore of their, or his, native country. Of course, it's a dark history collectively known as Warlocks Grim and Withered Hags by Hellripper. So right away you're thrown into the speed metal frenzy with blackened vocals, melodic thrash solos, and catchy riffs, but also a great deal of musical growth and a leaving behind of the predictability found on previous releases. We also get an epic feel at times. I think all of this really does make Hellripper stick out a bit more from the crowd, and that's pretty nice to hear. Favorites include the Knuckle of E, Warlock's Grim and Withered Hags, and Poisoned Womb, The Curse of the Witch. As I said in my review of this album early in the year, this really is the best Hellripper album so far. Still heavy and blackened, but just an overall more compelling record in terms of melody and structure. So anyways, at number 4 is Warlock's Grim and Withered Hags by Hellripper. At number 3 is an album from an American death metal band that brings in some hardcore influences, and is also one of the biggest extreme metal bands to come out of the great state of Texas since Power Trip. They are, of course, Creeping Death with their second studio album, Boundless Domain. So lots of brutality and groove brought with that hardcore flavor mentioned before. It's certainly steeped in old school death metal, but steers clear of some of the more predictable elements of that. Really dig the raspy and throaty vocals, which play well with the riffs, notably in the groove passages. Also a thick and sharp production with a bit of polish. Favorites on this one include Boundless Domain, Intestinal Rap, and Cursed. So with a marked improvement on songwriting, the record scores high with me for its riff-heavy mid-range chug, as well as its beat-down moments, bringing in some of the old and some of the new. Certainly step up from the last album, which I already enjoy. So at number 3 is Boundless Domain by Creeping Death. My number 2 choice is from an American progressive death metal band whose name is arguably the complete opposite of the quality of their music. They started out as a traditional death metal band, but brought in the progressive elements in future releases, including their 5th and most recent studio album, Ontological Mysterium. This is, of course, Horrendous. So quite the mix of styles here, including progressive, death, tech, shred, fusion, and trad metal. But unlike other bands that throw musical approaches together without any real thought to cohesion or songcraft, Horrendous really do make it work. Also dig the 2 vocalists and the differences in their styles as well. Favorites on this one are Neon Leviathan, Preterition Hymn, and Ontological Mysterium. So an excellent balance of styles that come together quite well and result in 38 minutes of an amazing album. Anyways, at number 2 is Ontological Mysterium by Horrendous. And my number 1 album of 2023 is from an American death grind band that has more than a couple things in common with Carcass, including a vegetarian stance, as well as lyrics about animal abuses. However, on their 10th studio album, they are certainly in a class all by themselves. That album is Terracite, and this is Cattle Decapitation. So Cattle Decap come back with a vengeance with their blend of death, grind, and the melodic, but now with some additional ambient elements added. Vocals range from barks to screeches to cleans, though often sounding as if they're from outer space. Also, an extremely tight performance, or what I've often referred to in the past as controlled chaos. Favorites include Scourge of the Offspring, The Storm Upstairs, and Solastalgia. So definitely not a predictable or standard death metal album by any stretch. It's certainly heavy and occasionally brutal, but also has a whole lot of passion and musicality that really keeps it all together and impresses me to no end. Granted, I might not agree 100% with the lyrics, but I also don't need to in order to recognize just how good this record is. Also, great live band. So the top metal album for me in 2023 is Terracite by Cattle Decapitation. Of course, there are also albums released in 2023 that others might put on their own lists, but simply didn't make mine. So to be fair, let's just mention some of them, and briefly. First is the 6th studio album from American tech thrash band Fetus. This is The Shadow Inside. A decent album that came out late in the year and one that I really hadn't spent enough time with, so it's not on my list. Next is the 2nd studio album from American atmospheric black metal band Black Braid. This is Black Braid 2. So great band, saw them live this summer when they toured with Dark Funeral and Cattle Decapitation. Just didn't get around to checking out the album. My bad. Also in 2023, we got the 8th studio album from Canadian tech death band Cryptopsy. This is As Gomorrah Burns. Didn't pick this up largely because I'm not always into this band. So there's that. I should also mention the 12th studio album from American death metal band Incantation. This is Unholy Deification. A popular choice for some this year. I didn't get it because I'm not an Incantation fan. To be fair, I haven't even heard it yet, but I'll get around to it. Also of relevance to 2023 is the fourth studio album from Canadian death metal band Tomb Mold. This is The Enduring Spirit. And I'll be honest, I didn't like this album, considering the one before it to be far better, but maybe that's just me. Maybe it's your favorite this year, and good on you. Of course, some folks are going to talk about the 11th studio album from American metal band Metallica. This is 72 Seasons. And like many albums from this band over the last 3 decades, this one had a few great tracks and a whole lot of okay ones. Anyways, an album I heard a few times and then didn't pick up for the rest of the year. But maybe one day I'll revisit it. Who knows? And just so you know, I had already done full reviews for all of my top 10 choices in past episodes of Vinyl Haul, so I didn't want to do the same thing here. If you want to watch those, I provided links in the description of this video to each and every one, so check those out when you get the chance. And speaking of these top 10 choices, what did you think of them? Do you have your own top 10 list, whether as a video or just inside your head? Let me know all of that, as well as anything else that makes sense, in the comments below. And of course, if you're new to my channel, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I cover the subject of metal vinyl collecting, but I also chat about classic and modern metal in general. If that sounds like something you want to see more of, then definitely consider subscribing to the channel. Also, like this video and maybe even share it with some of your friends. As for my regular viewers, a big thanks to all of you who've taken the time to watch my videos, comment on them, and share them on social media. Definitely looking forward to making more videos for you in 2024. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.